It's another year for all of us here at the Tirconaill Tribune, and for you out there as well. So happy New Year to all our listeners and indeed to all our readers. It's John McGrath here, Eamon McFadden and Declan Kerr, back with a review of our first paper of the year. And it's nice to be here. And a lot has happened in the meantime through Christmas. We haven't published now in 2 weeks. But the first thing that strikes me today is just to recognise the shocking tragedy of the death of that young lad in Armore Island, Tirconaill, 18-year-old youth. He died after he got into difficulties while swimming off Armore on Monday. He will be laid to rest on Friday, and our deepest sympathy goes to the family and to the entire community. We're also looking here at what does 2022 bring us? Have any ideas? Is it more of the same, more COVID?
Well, I suppose everybody's hoping not, but it's certainly in the next little while it's going to be COVID dominated. But we all hope that the Omicron variant dies out or dies away a bit anyway, and that we can get back to some kind of normality. But
are we getting any semblance of hope that extensive wave that swept across literally every community over the Christmas time is now diminishing a little bit? Or is it much the same?
I think they're saying that this is kind of coming to the peak of it. So it's after that, sort of the first couple of weeks after Christmas now, that we might see that wave peak and start to die off thereafter. And so maybe heading into the very early late winter, early springtime, we should, see how things will open up as best they can.
Hopefully that prediction is, or that kind of a prediction is right.
To what extent do you see things opening up, like schools? We don't know. John Boyle of the INTO said on radio this morning that he would expect a 15% absence due to COVID from teaching staff. That would be a very high level.
Yeah. Yet
at the same time, the Minister, Norma Foley, is saying that there's preparations in hand to draft in 2,500 new teachers or new staff.
Take back some retired ones.
Where they're going to get them from?
Yeah, because they were stretched well before Christmas in terms of replacement staff, so it's hard to see where.
You can see a figure of 15% would be realistic enough if like other sectors.
It might actually be low.
Might be low, it could be low.
But it's thousands of teachers.
We're not going to get a full picture until next week. Schools are opening on Thursday. I would imagine that the numbers of people are self-isolating in families. I know at one school close to us here in Milford that's not reopening until Monday because they have issues around the community with COVID, and they couldn't go ahead with it. Now we'll only find out probably from about this day a week on to what extent the impact of self-isolation and the whole regulations governing self-isolation, either close contacts or if you're in a positive case. The 10-day figure may be reduced to 7. We're gathering that, are we?
Yeah, that's.
And what happens to the close contacts? That is now 5 days, or in some cases 17, from what I'm gathering and hearing about. There's a certain amount of confusion around it. There's a certain amount of confusion as well about the availability of PCR tests. Families talking about having to visit centres 3 times.
They'd have to do like a lottery nearly to get in your
name. Like a lottery,
somewhere.
The portal opens at midnight, and actually minutes later, it's fully occupied. As far as antigen testing is concerned, I'm not quite certain about the availability of them.
They're in very short supply. I know of somebody was looking for them in Letterkenny yesterday, and a couple of big outlets, and they weren't available.
Yeah, it's funny. I just even see our own local shop in Creasla there. I putting the thing up to say that they are available, but I think they're kind of in some places they're nearly gone as soon as they're made available because
some of the supermarkets were selling them fairly cheaply. I think they've just sold like since the Christmas time.
But people will hoard them too. You see, people want to make sure if they're going to be doing some travelling or whatever that they have plenty of them.
But people are testing every day. You know, why is that?
Well, people are on the move and had people maybe visit from abroad or things like that. I can understand how antigen testing.
But is there any point in taking an antigen test unless you have some symptoms? You're always supposed to have at least 2 symptoms before you take any proactive measures. Either book a PCR test or take an antigen test. I mean, I would know families before Christmas who were actually going to leave the country. They went on a binge of antigen testing for days and then taking 3 and 4 testing for everybody in the house. and invariably one of them came down with COVID. Maybe 2 of them came down with COVID, maybe 3 of them.
Yeah.
But, you know, are we stretching these things to a limit that we don't need to? Are we panicking here? Do we need to be taking antigen testing unless we have symptoms? I mean, if you have a simple cold in the morning, you'll realise it's a simple cold. But if you have a sore head, if you have a temperature, if you have a dry throat and those kind of things, or a dry cough, then it would be advisable to get a test.
Yeah.
If you can find one.
If you can find one.
But anyway, COVID is dominating the new year. The only thing that we can guarantee in the new year in 2022 is that we're going to have a new Taoiseach, because Michael Martin has now begun the final leg of his term in office, which ends, I think, in around the 17th of December next.
Before Christmas.
Just before Christmas time. So Leo Varadkar has a whole year now. I can see him going on a real charm offensive of some kind or other. It may well be of his own making to sort of lift the Fine Gael party out of the slump that they've had in recent months, where Sinn Féin has literally taken over the opinion polls.
Yeah.
At one stage there, it was actually looking very much, if you analysed all the polls, the 8 polls, it looked as if Sinn Féin could easily swamp and have as much popularity in the polls as Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael combined. Now that would be a total disaster. There would probably be a national day of mourning if that had happened.
Would there be any roadblocks in the way for Leo?
Well, I mean, the issue of the leaking of confidential cabinet documents has not been dealt with. It's still been processed by the Gardaí after all these months. Would expect that will be dealt with. I mean, in normal circumstances, that should be dealt with by mid-year. The other thing that probably is happening, but it's not all that relevant at this point, is that the Gulfgate, the fallout from that is in court sometime now and later this month. There's no other big obstacles on the way. Fianna Fáil seem to have settled down an awful lot.
The Marion Gate and all that. He's wrote all that out of it.
But I think this is a year that Leo Varadkar will attempt to sort of regain a lot of ground. That he must do that. He's way behind in the polls. His own popularity has dropped quite alarmingly, and he's not near as sure-footed, and he doesn't have the same attention span as he did have. You're no longer listening to the morning news to hear what did Leo say about it or what did he not say about it, because he had this penchant last year, all of last year, to anticipate what Michael Martin might be going to say later in the day, and you got a glimpse of what Leo Varadkar had already said in Morning Ireland. That to a great extent has stopped. Now, we don't know where the country is headed given the whole circumstances of COVID, and it's all around COVID. It's also about inflation. Inflation is going to keep increasing because the cost of gas coming into the European Union is being increased almost monthly now by Russia, and there's very little we can do about it because the EU has allowed itself to have its situation undermined insofar as energy supplies are concerned. Over 60% of all energy coming into the EU now is coming from outside sources, mainly Russia. And this whole geopolitical mess that's going on there on the borders, and the fact that the pipe, the major Eurogrid gas pipe, has to come through Soviet territory and is controlled by them. And the reality is that people living in Russia, their energy supplies their costs are 90% cheaper than they are in the EU. That is such is the dominance that Russia has been allowed to develop and to maintain. Putin is keeping the screws on that, and it doesn't seem like there's any solution in hand. Although there's been talks with Joe Biden. You just wonder where
very
they go.
In the Ukraine.
It's a very dangerous situation. The other thing we've looked at here, we've just gone through the paper. There's been we've done newspaper reviews of the year. We've done sports reviews of the year. In sport, Declan, what stuck out really, or what struck you as of major importance in Donegal?
Well, I suppose in the two major sports, I suppose Van Harp surviving again in the Premier Division was another big achievement, all right. And I suppose on the Donegal GA front, there was great disappointment, at their exit at the semi-final from the Ulster Championships. So listen, all eyes will be on those two teams again in 2022 to see where they're going. Harps have Ollie Horgan has a big job in his hands to rebuild the side. He's lost 8 of his more senior players, and he did sign a couple in the last couple of days, but he's still a lot of work ahead of him.
That's a big
For
exodus.
the Donegal GA team, this is, for Declan Bonner, he really has to get an Ulster title again, if to get Donegal back on the road. That's going to be a tall order. Tyrone are a very, very fine side, and they are
for a while.
They are the benchmark now, definitely.
Does Declan Boyle have any new players coming through? He's losing a bit of momentum.
Well, he's lost a couple of players.
Yeah.
McNeilis,
Very
McNeilis gone,
players.
and Owen McHugh is gone. So they're starting their McKenna Cup campaign on Friday night against Down. We'll see what new players he has then. Obviously, there's been numbers of players on for trials and that sort of stuff. So we'll see what new faces will be on at McCool Park on Friday night. But listen, it's going to be a tough season ahead, and obviously with the COVID in the early stages, games being played even is going to be difficult.
Yeah, it's going to be around at that stage, you'd think.
Sorry?
You get this feeling that this is the third year into COVID that is probably going to dominate most of this year again. Definitely into the middle of the year anyway.
But you wouldn't rule it out because...
No, you can't rule
Well,
it
that
out.
has been the trend really the last 2 years. It's really been May.
It's
really
waves
been
back
May.
and you get a new variant.
If you just look to sport, having done the review this year or for last year and the previous year, it was really May before sport started to. That's just sport started to get into a fair bit of activity again.
We can only hope that there are brighter days ahead, because with vaccinations and with antiviral drugs and all that coming on stream, there's also the possibility somewhere further down the road towards the end of this year that a vaccination could become available that may prevent it, and that would effectively kill it entirely.
Yeah.
That's actually probably is what scientists are working towards, because the possibility of other new variants arising, they're going to be a continuing and ever-present threat.
Yeah, it should be sort of continually weakened though, but they're saying that possibly one of the things could be developing on coming online soon as like an oral solution you take rather than sort of the jabs as everyone has been getting for some time now. So
there are all those kinds of possibilities.
And,
I suppose the fact is that over 2.5 million people have their triple jab got that, and there's a lot of progress been made there. I mean, the big success of last year, there's no doubt about it, is the rollout of the vaccination programme. But on top of that, the numbers of people that just rushed to be vaccinated right throughout the whole year, way above and beyond all expectations. It's about 95% probably. You're just left with a small handful now of just, I don't know if you'd call them anti-vaxxers or just people who just don't like having vaccinations or don't accept that COVID's a real problem.
I suppose the big issues in the developing countries where there's so little,
effectively
so little vaccine.
I was just researching something the other night there, and I came across a lot of those frightening statistics from the third world, effectively, where less than 4% of vaccination program, and you're not going to deliver a full solution unless all of those countries are all vaccinated, because people are always travelling nowadays between different points across the globe. But we're going to move into a kind of the mode of what we're reporting. We have this story from Fanad, property vandalism near Port Salon. Eamon, you're just looking at that here. Some very dramatic pictures.
There's some very dramatic pictures from it too as well. You'll see, and this is major damage, as described, a serious bout of vandalism at a property near Port Salon just before Christmas. An oil burner, a heating system, a fuel tank were extensively damaged, along with a digger, hay bales, and all this on the Knacalla Road. Hundreds of litres of heating oil. Seems to be very targeted act of vandalism here. This house and this farmland have had pipes cut, bales slashed.
It's a very, very serious incident.
Very sinister.
Very sinister for everybody concerned, because it's as I say, it's a long loch swilly on the main road about 2 miles north of Port Salon, 2.5 to 3 miles maybe, and it's a quiet area, sparsely populated area. You'll recognise it from if you know that Port Salon Farnhead Head Road via the Swilly. It's near St Columba's Holy Well, just about a couple of 100 metres above that, and there seems to be no obvious reason. I've talked to the owner who has bought that house, that he's going to, him and his partner, are going to live there fairly soon, and that raises all kinds of fears about who or why or what's that all about there. And I've talked to the man at some length, and I mean, you can't bow to those kind of threats.
It's a hugely stressful time for that individual and his, and his partner.
Yeah, because
it was done to strike fear, obviously, and it's done that.
And
but it's also going to cost out of pocket, because it's going to cost them thousands to kind of
rectify. The reality is that nobody came into Fannet to do that wanton damage. It was done at home, pretty close to home, maybe within 4 or 5 kilometres, maybe even less. You don't know that, but most of these things are have a life of that kind.
Yeah, it's too remote for.
It's much too remote, and the fact that that part of the vandalism was done about 10 kilometres away, up near the White Stand Football Club, belonged to the same family. So there's a lot of inside knowledge there, and maybe that does give a clue to the Gardaí. And what we're saying and appealing to people is that if you have any suspicions, this happened on either the night of the 18th or the 19th of December. So it's a bit back.
That weekend, the weekend before.
If you're on that road that night, and if you have any inkling of having seen any suspicious circumstances, don't hesitate to lift the phone and ring the Gardaí at Milford 91 53060. We're going to look then at the former editor of the Derry Journal, Pat McGrath, has written a very, very decent piece for the Tribune this week. Is a Fianna Fáil Fine Gael merger a necessity, is the question he poses, and the headline is Uniting for Irish Unity. And I suppose on the dawn of a year that we celebrate the 100th anniversary of this state, and the consequent fallout on the Fianna Fáil Fine Gael debacle that has gone on for 100 years, where the two parties don't have an awful lot dividing them, other than the history and other than one group took one side following the signing of the treaty, and the De Valera's group became anti-treaty, and out of that over the years evolved the two main parties in this country. They're both more or less identical, other than in name. There might be very little principle between them, but Pat McGrath is delving into that in great depth, and he's saying here that by 2020 we were just talking about when they actually united to form a government with the Green Party rather than Sinn Féin. But by 2020 that bitterness that had all but dissipated. Irish society has moved on. Indeed, in more recent times, pundits would have been hard-pressed to point out any significant differences on the big issues of our times between, for example, Bertie Ahern's Fianna Fáil government and that of earlier Garret Fitzgerald administrations. That is going to be a debate that's going to go on. They have survived 18 months in power. There have been rocky times, but fundamentally both parties are of the same mindset. And the real opposition here is coming from Sinn Féin, as it will continue to do right up until the next election, probably and well beyond it. What the outcome or what the result of that might be, I wouldn't even attempt to even predict it, because Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have a long legacy of service to the Irish people, and there's a certain amount of a support base there, come hell or high water. And Sinn Féin will probably increase their presence in the Dáil. Whether it's going to be enough to get them into power, I think all the other parties will be united almost to keep them out. And this is where Ireland is at now, as we celebrate 100 years of having their own parliament in Dublin. So it's an interesting piece. It's well worth the read, and it's from Pat McGrath, probably one of the most experienced journalists who retired far too early. He probably made far too much money and nothing else to do with it. We're going to take a look then. Old diaries, Declan, Paddy McMenamin.
Yeah, Paddy, our good friend Paddy McMenamin, recently came across old diaries from the Tirconaill GA club, and some great memories, some great stories, football, golf. It's not all GA. There are all sorts of things there, and even memories like places that are not with us anymore, like the Milford Inn, the Water's Edge, Tirconaill Bingo.
The Ballyrain Hotel.
Ballyrain Hotel.
Barman.
Yeah,
where he met a lot of friends.
And of course, we get a bit from in relation to the Celtic as well in there as well. But it's a lovely piece and a great spread of stuff on it.
Right, we're going to go from that straight to the lead story, Eamon. and very, very dramatic pictures from that. Priestlet church repair bill could exceed 250,000.
That was it. That was the drama that unfolded locally there on a Monday, the bank holiday there, before, I suppose in many ways they were lucky it was a bank holiday, because when the word came out there was a bit of damage done onto the back of the chapel, I got a call to say that, and I assumed it was a bit of windows came in or something like that there, but when it came around, the scale of the damage was quite extensive, and that there's a big section at the rear of the chapel just completely missing. It was completely exposed. You could see right into the ceiling cavity of it.
Yeah, like it is that lovely structure underneath the roof line there, where you have the windows literally just that area above the windows, which was smooth plaster, but it was virtually suspended there.
Yeah, that was it.
The damage is very, very extensive. We have beautiful, well, not beautiful, very dramatic pictures from it. But as more the outstanding feature there, apart from the damage, was the response of the community.
Yeah, well, that's it. As I say, the cost of it's astronomical, but that's good to repair. But that'll be for another time when they get on. The word went out to see if anybody could lend a helping hand, and within a very short period of time, there was a whole team of people, builders, all sorts of tradesmen were there, and they were on hand with ladders and equipment and anything that was needed. Was
materials.
Aye, they rallied.
Father John Joe said materialised out of nowhere.
Yeah, that is.
Such is the power of Father John Joe and his beloved PP, Father Martin Duhan. And with that, that's it from us for the first edition of the Tribune. Enjoy it. Talk to you next week.